Joining us this evening for a special discussion is Walter Anderson, author and American academician, with us from the US. Good evening, Walter. One down, six to go. Yes. Everyone who's followed this Indian election has a theory on who is winning and why. What is your theory?
Well, my long years in diplomacy taught me not to make too precise a prediction because you're very likely to be wrong and people remember it. But, if you look at the polling suggests that the NDA has an advantage. And the poll of polls, a recently one I saw, have them, quite close to a majority, not at a majority, but quite close. And the Congress about less than half of that, with the remainder being regional parties. So at least on that, basis, on the polling basis, it seems that the NDA has an advantage. The other point I think to keep in mind is the polling also suggests that in India, people make up their minds relatively early in the polling process. It used to be they've made up their minds quite late, but that doesn't seem to be the case, that more and more are making their minds up early. If that's the case, then polls are a good indicator of where things are going.
Right. So you're saying the NDA has the advantage. When you speak to people here, they speak about the ruling setup in two parts. There is Narendra Modi and there is the BJP and the government. So when they have some angst, when they have some issues with the ruling dispensation, it's usually anti-incumbency for the BJP, not for the Prime Minister. Has Mr. Modi, according to you, been able to successfully distance himself from the anti-incumbency while all the time steering the ship?
I think it's a brilliant point to distinguish Modi as a person and his charisma from the party. You're right. All polling shows that he outpolls the BJP considerably. Question I think that you're asking is there a lap over, from Modi to the party? Most people seem to think that support for the leader translates into support for the party. A lot depends, though, on how angry they are at the administration, particularly locally, and then combine that with some local factors like caste, for example, or religion. But my own feeling is that there tends to be a lap over from the popularity of the Prime Minister, and he is charismatic, and he far outdistances his party in many places.
Right. Also joining us is Professor Makarand Paranjpe. He's Director of Indian Institute for Advanced Studies, with us from New Delhi, I'm told. Professor Paranjpe, what is your calculation? Is this an election Modi versus the rest, or will it boil down to individual constituencies?
Well, it's both. It's a combination, obviously. As you just heard, the charisma of the leader is really important because whether we like it or not, this is a presidential-style election, and if you ask the common person on the street, their basic issue is this: do you want Modi back for another 5 years or not? They're not that concerned with which party they bring in. But we can't rule out, all the other considerations, the local, the party, the candidate. The candidate locally is also really important because we saw in Madhya Pradesh that certain candidates are so disliked by their voters, by the constituency, that they want them out, whether or not, they like the leader or the party. The other thing I wanted to say is what's so interesting about these elections, it's a triangular kind of contest. So on the one hand, you have these regional parties with their, feeble attempts at getting together, and then you have a presidential-style face-off between Narendra Modi, the incumbent Prime Minister on the one hand, and Rahul Gandhi, a rising star. So I think there are all these three factors that are going to play an important role. And I feel that the BJP may poll, fewer, maybe they'll have the same percentage of votes or even more, but the seat count may come down this time. And the Congress seat count may go up. But all the same, I still see the BJP coming back.
Right. It's interesting that you call it a presidential-style contest. So then my next question to you is this. Has Rahul Gandhi then shed the Pappu tag? And is he better poised for a personality battle now than he was in 2014?
Who would you like to answer that?
Definitely. He is sort of grown a little bit, but yet he doesn't sort of match the PM. I think there is a certain kind of immaturity that comes across, and I think that in a straight fight, I don't think he has a chance. But as I said, the Congress engine, the Congress machine, its publicity and its preparation look really better. And there is some anti-incumbency, whether we like it or not. What I call fatigue, fatigue with the same faces, with the same rhetoric, the same rhetoric is carried on for 5 years. And obviously voters do want a little bit of a change. And the X factor in these elections is always, the Mahagathbandhan or the Mahamilawat, call it what you will. I think the local factors will definitely play a role.
Right. Walter Anderson, your thoughts on Rahul Gandhi and whether you believe he's come of age and whether he's lost, many say he's lost the golden opportunity to capitalize on the state election wins. He could have stitched alliances. They're still doing back and forth in Delhi. In Uttar Pradesh, they say that we are open to a post-poll alliance, but Mayawati and Akhilesh lose no opportunity in saying that the voters should not waste their vote for Rahul Gandhi. So does this show desperation, better preparedness? How do you assess the Congress's electoral fight?
Well, the Congress has always had a certain weakness at the structural level and still do. And in fact, one of the great advantages I was going to mention before that the BJP has, it has a huge cadre of people willing to work for it, and largely from the RSS. And we talk about several 100,000 people who are willing to go out and get the vote, encourage people to get to the polling. And at the end of the day, those sorts of things count. Now, to Rahul Gandhi and his style, I know a few people, personally know a few people who are close to the family, and they say he has improved considerably in his style. But you're against a person like Modi, and I totally agree with the other speaker that this has aspects of a presidential election. It's Rahul versus Modi. You have one of the most effective speakers, political speakers in the world, and Prime Minister Modi. He's phenomenal. I watch him, I've seen him many times to give a speech. He blocks out the world around him. It's like an actor going on the stage. He gets up and it's like someone turns on a switch and out comes this very emotional speech, well organized. I'm amazed at how well organized they are. Look at the audience. They tend to sort of be receptive. I don't see that nearly as effective. So there's two aspects of, in the presidential, as who has the more effective style, speaking and ability to touch people, and organization. The BJP, because of the vast cadre of people willing to work for it, has an enormous advantage in that. They also have more money. All the records indicate that they have about 5 to 6 times, if not more, cash on hand to use for a variety of purposes, for electoral purposes.
Indeed, they do, and they're spending more. All the ad figures show, both on social media and otherwise, the BJP is spending more. Professor Paranjpe, what I want to ask you is this: you say that the BJP is most likely coming back in power with fewer numbers.
Can I comment on the earlier question?
Sure. Go ahead.
Yeah. Palki, can I come back
Absolutely.
on the earlier question? I think that was a very important question you raised. I don't believe that the Congress should be desperate in stitching up alliances where it comes across as not only the second, second-rate partner, or, in fact, the kind of humiliating terms offered in UP, just 2 seats, or, even in Delhi. I think it should position itself as the national party which wants to challenge the BJP. So I think that not stitching up alliances is not going to go against the Congress. I think that their strategy should be, that's why I said it's a three-cornered contest. There are 2 national parties, and then there's a bunch of, regional parties, a configuration of them, in fact. So I don't tend to think of them as, failing because they couldn't, make these alliances where they're obviously the junior partner, which they shouldn't be. Now, coming back to the point that was made by the other speaker, the first thing to remember is the BJP today is the largest political organization in the world with more than 100 million members. Now, how that translates to votes is complicated. We don't know if all these 100 million members vaunted or, boasted 100 million figure are going to translate to votes. But for sure, they're a gargantuan organization. The second thing he said, I completely agree. The charisma of Narendra Modi, he is a political personality par excellence. He goes into this zone, he stands in front of his audience, And he's into this zone in which these amazing, not only facts, figures, but slogans, pop out in a sequence that is almost mesmerizing. He enthralls his audience. But once again, we shouldn't consider that all of this is going to immediately turn into votes. The fact is that people respect him and want him again as Prime Minister. But I think that all these other factors, the local factor, the local candidate, the BJP and its image,
Right.
in the constituency, the caste, the community and religion. Don't forget, religion is going to play such a huge role. The Muslim votes in certain constituencies are going to be a deciding factor. If they are not divided, if they vote en bloc. Which brings us to the other point that you raised, which is, do votes transfer? Let's say Akhilesh and Mayawati are together. Does it mean their entire vote bank will transfer? I'm not sure. I think the Jatavs are very loyal to Mayawati, but I'm not sure whether the other SC votes are also going to transfer to the alliance.
Right. I'm running out of time, but I want to ask this question to both of you, starting with you, Professor Paranjpe. You say that most likely Narendra Modi is going to come back to power with fewer numbers. That seems to be the general assessment also. If that happens, it will be the first time in the history of independent India that the Congress will be out of power at the center for a decade. Is this, in a sense, Congress Mukt Bharat that Amit Shah keeps talking about?
I don't think so. I don't think we are looking at a Congress Mukt Bharat in any, near future. I think there is a space for a counterbalancing factor, political factor in the Indian scenario. And the Congress, if it gets its act together, will be waiting in the wings. So I don't think about this as a Congress Mukt Bharat. And by the way, we don't know. This is the first phase of the polls. And what's extraordinary, I'm sure you brought it up, is the high voter turnout, 70%. And in places like Jammu and Kashmir, which are, rife with militancy, we've had more than 50% turnout. So I think there's a great enthusiasm for this carnival called Indian democracy. And in the remaining phases, things may go, in any which way. It's too early to tell.
Absolutely. Walter Anderson, your thoughts on this? 10 years out of power for the Congress party?
Well, I think that will damage, in many ways, the Congress. The Congress in the past has survived in part because it was dispenser of patronage. And now it's 10 years without that patronage. And it's never been a very ideological party. It's been, as some people described it, that appeals to many, but, it doesn't have a firm ideological message. Except maybe in the past it was secularism, but it's becoming increasingly, what should I say, more a Hindu in its, in its orientation. I noticed that Priyanka went to a temple before voting, and it was widely publicized that she did that. So, you have, on the one hand, you have the BJP, which has a distinct, there's an ideology and an organization. And you have a Congress which, out of power for 10 years, is, would be the case if it were to lose again. I think creates certain problems for the Congress party, and maybe even the unity of the party, might as well be challenged as people begin to look at why they didn't come back to power.
It's going to be an interesting summer. Thanks very much. As you said, it's just the first phase. Who knows what lies ahead. Thank you very much, both of you, Walter Anderson and Makarand Paranjpe, for joining us and for this very engaging discussion. We have called it the Carnival of Democracy. We've put together some of the most dramatic, some of the most interesting and touching images from the first phase of polling. Leaving you with this. Thanks very much for watching.